YouTube, what up? It's Matty B. Welcome back to the channel, and as always, thank y'all for watching. I really appreciate y'all. Yes, I am down here on the pull-out couch. No, Top Chick has not kicked me out and made me sleep down here. This is just the room that I can get the least echo in for a video. No choice. I think today's video is going to be a fun one. This is one of the oldest debates in motocross, an age-old debate. MXGP versus AMA, Europe versus America. Who's better? Me personally, most of the time, I actually don't dig this argument. I actually just love to enjoy both series. For all you Americans out there that don't watch any MXGP, I would highly recommend it. The racing is awesome. And then obviously our racing stateside here in the AMA series is great as well. And the bummer is, like, we'll never really get a true answer unless we have a series where all of these AMA and MXGP riders race together for a season. We have one race at the end of the year, Motocross of Nations, but just in my opinion, I don't really like to use that as much of a gauge. I mean, it's one race each year, it's one track each year. So just this year, for example, Adderley Basin was really good for Geyser, and he ended up stomping everybody, where if it was a sand track or something, it might have been a different story. And then some riders that have teams that could win, some riders that don't have teams that could win. That kind of changes how people race, so I don't really love to use that as a gauge. I don't think it's very accurate. After this year's Motocross of Nations, I was going through social media, scrolling through Twitter, watching everybody argue about who's better, MXGP or AMA, again for the 9,000th year in a row. And I scrolled across a tweet from the legend Denny Stevenson. He actually put out a tweet where he ranked his top 10 best riders in the world, AMA, MXGP, MX2, 450, 250. He included everybody and just made himself a top 10. And that kind of gave me a light bulb moment, which is cool because usually lights are on and nobody's home, but this kind of sparked some interest for me to do a video like this. I made myself a quick list for both classes. And I was just going to do the video of my rankings, but then I kind of figured, you know, just one lapper's opinion isn't really enough for an interesting video. So I decided to bring some hard data and some numbers to the table. Couldn't find any stats readily accessible, so I decided to just crunch the numbers myself. And guys, don't worry, I'm more than qualified for the job. I got an A in community college statistics back in the day, so don't even bother double checking me. Now, I could definitely make some mistakes, but I think for the most part, we're pretty accurate. I'll try to go through these stats as fast as possible so I can get to the end of the video, which is my personal top 10 ranking for the 250 and 450 classes. I try to be as unbiased as possible. Obviously, I'm an American. I've got American pride, but I feel like whenever you see my ranking, I think you guys will realize I'm really trying to take my bias out of it. And the one thing with these stats, the MXGP season is almost twice as long as the AMA season, so I couldn't just really go by moto wins or podiums or anything like that. So I went with average finish and then percentages like win percentage, top 3, top 5, etc. So I feel like those numbers paint a decent picture on who you can kind of compare each rider to in each respective series. Please let me know in the comments what you all think. Let me know your rankings. Let me know if you think I'm stupid. If you think my rankings are on point, just whatever you think, let me know. Don't hold back. And now enough babbling, let's get into some stats, and we'll start with the MX2 and 250 classes.
Starting with 250 average moto finish, we got Deegan on top with just over a 2.5, and that's with a 10 and 11 at the end of the season after he wrapped up the championship. Then we got a couple of MXGP guys, DeWolf and Coonan. And even though DeWolf and Coonan have technically a higher average moto finish than Deegan, I don't necessarily think that means that Deegan's better than them. The MXGP series has almost twice as many motos, and they race on a lot of different surfaces. They had a lot more mud races than we had in the States, which was 0. Then we got Vial, Kitchen, and Langenfelder, who are all podium guys. And as you can see here, there's a little bit of a bigger drop-off after about that 15th spot in the AMA series. It goes from 11.87 all the way up to 14. I think overall the racing and the level of the entire field is just a little bit tighter in MXGP. Then we go to 250 moto win percentage. Coonan barely beats out Deegan, both of them winning almost half of the motos they enter. Third highest percentage is Kyle DeWolf. He wins just a little bit more than a quarter of the time, and most of those losses are to Lucas Coonan. And I think the difference we're seeing here is we kind of have 3 alphas in MXGP with Coonan, DeWolf, and Langenfelder splitting wins, where in the AMA series, Deegan kind of has it under control. And the question that brings up is Deegan really just that good, or is the rest of the field just struggling? Then we got our moto podium percentages. Deegan on top again with a pretty solid gap over the rest of the field in AMA, while DeWolf tops the MXGP series with a much smaller gap over Coonan and Langenfelder. These numbers show me that the top 3 is a little bit more set in MXGP with DeWolf, Coonan, and Langenfelder, while in AMA there's a lot more guys that have a chance to throw themselves on the box for the day. However, there is a higher number of riders that have podiumed at MXGP, and I think that's due to the insane variety of tracks. Top 5 moto percentages, again, Deegan on top by a mile in the AMA series, and we're starting to sense a trend here in MXGP. It's much tighter at the top. We have 5 MXGP racers with a better top 5 moto percentage than second place in the AMA series, which is really crazy to me because the MXGP guys have such a wide range of tracks they race on, yet there's 5 of them that are more consistent than everybody except for Hayden Deegan in the AMA series. Then last but not least, we got top 10 moto percentages. We got a couple of perfect score 100s on each side of the pond, but both of the AMA riders riders with 100s did not complete the full season, and neither did Everts, so we're going to crown Kai DeWolf as the king of consistency on this one. And these percentages are actually very similar for both series. There's a bit of a sharper drop-off around that 14 spot in MXGP, but for the most part, they're a lot more comparable than I anticipated, being that one series kicks people out at a certain age and the other doesn't. Now on to the big dogs, the 450, starting with average moto finish, Sexton on top with just under a 2. Then we got Hunta at 2.6, followed by the MXGP contingent Prado, Hurlings, and Geyser. And remember, y'all, the MXGP season is much longer than the AMA season. They have deep sand races, mud races, all kinds of variety. Just because Chase and Hunta have the 2 lowest average moto scores does absolutely not mean that I think those 2 are the best. Then you got Fevra just under 4, followed by Jet with a 4.0, who had a 1.0 last year. And after I get through the first 7 or 8 on the list, I'm actually going to go with the MXGP contingent for most of these matchups. With the MXGP series kicking riders out of the 250 class at 23 years old, I really think that makes for a much more stacked and overall way deeper field. I just feel like the guys in 15th in MXGP are going a lot faster than the guys in 15th in AMA. No offense to anybody in 15th. I wish I could be one of those guys. 450 moto win percentages. Jet dominates this one even after racing hurt. He didn't finish the season, but I think this is still a very fair assessment as he had a 100% win rate in 2023. Sexton just barely behind him with 59%, and then we have the 3 MXGP big dogs, Prado, Hurlings, and Geyser. And I think the real difference here is whenever Jet's healthy, he's pretty much expected to win. When Jet's hurt, Sexton's pretty much expected to win, where in MXGP, it's kind of a coin toss between Prado, Hurlings, and Geyser on each weekend, depending on the track. Then we got 450 moto podiums, Sexton on the podium almost 87% of the time, followed by Prado with an insane 82% podium rate over 40 motos. Then there's Jet, Geyser, and Hurlings. Comparing the 2 series, I noticed that AP's on the podium more than Fevra, and I think Fevra has a slight edge over AP, so that kind of shows me it's a little bit more difficult to podium in MXGP against Prado, Geyser, and Hurlings than it is in the AMA series whenever Jet's out. There's also more riders with podium potential in MXGP, and again, I chalk that up to the variety in tracks. Top 5 moto percentages, Hunta with the perfect score with the 100%, closely followed by Sexton, then Geyser and Prado very close on the MXGP side. Looking at these numbers show me that the top 5 is much more set in the AMA series. MXGP could have a lot more surprise top 5s, and there's a much bigger gap from the main top 5 threats in the AMA series to the rest of the field compared to MXGP. MXGP just really has a tighter overall field, and I think part of that may be due to them racing outdoors all year and no Supercross. It just keeps everybody tighter. And finally, top 10 moto percentages, several 100%, 3 in each series, and these numbers show that there's a lot less variety in the top 10 in the AMA series. It's usually just the same guys in a different order. In MXGP, there's more overall competition in the 450 class because they moved the 250 riders out of the 250 class at 23 years old, so everybody in that age group is forced to race the best of the best in the 450 class.
Now that we've been through the numbers, it's time to get to the fun part of the video. My top 10 rankings for the fastest racers in the world in each class. Let's get it.
Starting with the 250 class, number 10, I have Joe Shimoda. I just don't think he was quite as good on the Honda. I think he had a little bit more flash on the Kawasaki. Usually starts the season slow and then finds form and can go on some runs. And whenever he's on, he's better than 10th, but he just wasn't quite on as much this year. In 9th, I have Liam Everts, a few wins and several podiums in the MXGP series. He started the year hurt and was still good right away. He's insanely good in the mud, a great sand rider, and this is a 3rd-generation legend in the making. In 8th, I have Chance Hymas. He was a total revelation this year in the outdoor series. When he was on, he could run with just about anyone. He just had some issues with inconsistency and crashes, along with injuries, which he was racing through all summer. If he can just stay healthy, he'll be one to watch big time for several years to come. Number 7, I've got Rick James, RJ Hampshire. We didn't quite get the full picture outdoors this year in 2024, although he did podium his 2nd race back at Ironman while he was hurt. RJ sends it like none other and has the speed of almost anyone in the world as long as the sun doesn't bite him. 6th, I've got Levi Kitchen. Tons of speed. He's just kind of hot and cold. He had several wins this summer here in the States, but also had several motos out of the top 5 and even a few out of the top 10. He's able to start up front. He's definitely staying there and can be in the mix to battle with anyone, but when he gets a bad start, it's a different story. Into the top 5, 5th, I have Simone Langenfelder. He had a few wins in MXGP, was 3rd in points, even through an injury, and this dude has the potential to be an MXGP champion if he can harness his winning speed all the time. He has his work cut out for him going against Coonan and DeWolf, but he's got some serious speed. 4th, I've got Tom Vial, 2-time MXGP champ, 2nd in the AMA series this year. He struggled a little bit more here in the States than he did in MXGP. Maybe MXGP Vial was a little better. I know they have different bikes over there. He's just made a lot of mistakes over here for a 2-time world champion, but he still had a few wins and always is up front. 3rd, I've got Kai DeWolf, and it's kind of tough putting a world champion in 3rd behind somebody that he beat all year, but he was by far the most consistent in MXGP. I just don't quite think he was the fastest guy. He played the long game all year for the championship, and that may be affecting my rankings. Hurlings. I just think he's a tick below this number 2 rider in speed. Picking between these last 2 riders is really tough for me. Number 2, I've got Lucas Kuhnen. He has insane speed, but just way too many bad motos. Out of the top 10 a few times in a DNF in the first moto of the season. I think his speed is incredibly similar to my number 1 ranking, but the consistency just isn't there. He's supposed to be in the USA in 2026, so we may get the matchup between him and our number 1 sooner than we think. And number 1, Flame On. Welcome to the danger zone. Hayden Deegan. I feel like his speed is incredibly similar to Kuhnen's. He just has a lot more consistency and is able to get through adversity a lot better. I think if Kuhnen and Deegan are both on their A game, it would be an incredible race. But overall, I think Deegan just barely has the edge. I mean, he basically gets first or second every time he races. Now on to the 450s. 10th, I have AP Yeehaw, the fan favorite. He's another one. He's been kind of a revelation this year. Really stepped it up outdoors and in. Tons of podiums this summer on the box in half of the races. I think he's just a tick off in top-end speed of a lot of these guys, but he's incredibly consistent. 9th, I have Calvin Vlanderen. I feel like he's one of the most criminally underrated MXGP racers. He had by far the most success in breaking into the podium groove of Geyser, Prado, and Hurlings. Finally got a factory ride, but I feel like he still flies under the radar a little bit, but this guy is seriously legit. In 8th, I have Hunter Lawrence. I feel like I may be selling him a little bit short after the awesome year he had, but you can attribute a lot of his success to staying healthy and being consistent, not as much on the top-end speed. Always puts himself at the front, was in the top 5 100% of the time this year. 7th, I have Roman Fevra, past MXGP champion all the way back in 2015. He has a little bit of a problem staying healthy all season, but the speed is there. Managed to break through those 3 big MXGP giants for a few moto wins this season. Fevra's a bad dude. He's just racing other really bad dudes. 6th, I have Eli Tomac. Feels like a bit of a disservice to have him all the way down here. If he's in beast mode, I would put him much higher, but he's not always there, and we haven't seen him outdoors in a few years besides these last couple rounds this year. We haven't seen a full season out of him since 2022, and if we had, I'm sure that this ranking would be higher. 5th, I have Chase Sexton. Pretty crazy for me to be putting the AMA champion all the way back in 5th. We all know Chase rips, but Jet usually has the upper hand. He won the championship this year with the absence of Jet. I think Chase had a little bit more top-end speed on the Honda, but he's got some more consistency with his KTM, and I truly think his ranking would be higher if he didn't spend half the year riding Supercross. 4th, I have Tim Geyser, almost the MXGP champion this year. I think out of the big 3 in MXGP, he has the least top-end speed, paired with the most consistency, which makes him a serious title threat. He has several MXGP championships to his name, and I think he's another one that's a little bit underrated. 3rd, I have Jeffrey Hurlings, the Bullet. When he's on, I feel like he actually is probably number 1 on this list. You take him to the sand, and if he's half feeling it that day, nobody's touching him. But his Achilles heel is being made out of glass. He hasn't made it through a season until this season in several years. Jeffrey has very similar speed to my number 2 rider, but he was just a lot more hot and cold this year. Number 2, 2024 world champion Jorge Prado. Prado has really leveled up in the last year or two, and now he's taken elite level speed like Hurlings paired with his consistency. And it's a lethal combo that I really only think could be taken down by one rider who we will get to see him go up against next year and beyond. My number 1, Jet Lawrence. He just can't be denied. I know he was hurt this year and he lost out on the championship, but the dude literally went 22-0 as a rookie last year. Even Jeffrey Hurlings can't believe how fast the dude is. He does things on the bike that I've never seen really anybody do. Even while he was hurt this summer, he was still able to win races, and just in my book, he's the undisputed number 1 in the world. Now, if you look at my overall rankings by series, you can see my American pride show out with the AMA going number 1 in both classes, but then I almost need to identify as a commie for the rest of the positions, especially in the 450 class. I just think with everybody 23 and older being forced to the 450 class in Europe, combined with them riding outdoors all year, just leads to a more stacked 450 field and a tighter field. Where in the 250 class, I actually think that goes against them in the MXGP series, and the AMA has actually a deeper field. Then if you look at my rankings by location, that even tells a bit of a different story as well, because even some of the AMA riders that I have at the top are actually not from America. But it's cool to see the parity with different people shredding around different parts of the world. We got USA, Europe, Australia, Japan, even South Africa in the mix. And my closing thought here is, imagine if these were the race results for a combined MXGP AMA race. We can only dream. Or maybe there is something in the works. Stay tuned, y'all.
Alright everyone, those are my rankings of the top 10 best motocross racers in the world in both classes. Obviously, this is a very subjective list. That's why I tried to bring some stats into the contract, try to get a little bit of fact in here and not just completely opinion. But again, like I said, this is just one man's opinion. I really want to know what you all think. Please feel free to leave your top 10 rankings in the comments and let me know where you think I was out to lunch, what you agreed with. Just let me know what you think. Everybody's got different thoughts and I want to hear them. So yeah, that's a wrap for today's video. Appreciate y'all tuning in. I really hope you enjoyed this. And yeah, moral of the story, let's just have respect for all these racers on both sides of the pond. They are all badass, and I'm a fan of watching all of it. We out.